Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. Funding for Chautauqua Sunrise is provided in part by the Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency, with offices in Jamestown and Dunkirk, helping businesses to prosper throughout Chautauqua County. From supporting people with disabilities to enjoy great lives, to providing health care services that are available to anyone, the Resource Center has been improving our county for more than 60 years. Learn more about how the Resource Center makes a positive difference in people's lives. From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Over here. Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry.
Well, it's a new year and we're still figuring this out after all these years. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Doc Hamels, and welcome to Chautauqua Sunrise, and hope you're all doing well. It's a little sloppy out there, a little damp and snowy, but it's easy to shovel, so I'm happy with that. Unfortunately, the dogs are traipsing through the house with muddy paws and everything else, but we'll get through this season. Hope you had a good New Year and safe one. We were real veterans of New Year's Eve. By 11 o'clock, we were sound asleep. That ball comes down every year the same old way, so it was like there was nothing new. It was just here it comes. So, anyways, seems hard to believe we were just here last week, and it was still 2022, right? And now it's 2023. Show 431, Justin. We're getting old, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. You're older though.
I'm older though. You're older. Anyways, this year should prove to be interesting as last year was. First of all, before I go any further, I want to say good morning to all you that are watching. I want to say good afternoon for those of you that are listening to me on WRFA 107.9, Low Power to the People in Jamestown on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. We've got a show I always call these shows sobering. I call these shows educational and reality, because we're going to talk about some things that maybe you're not aware of, and also some things that maybe we kind of don't really pay attention to because it's not comfortable. So that's going to be that kind of show today. And as you know, we have things that are different levels, different kinds of interest to different people. But this is one of those shows that I think everybody should pay attention to and think about as we go throughout the show today. All right, so stick around. Hey, we are live right now at this very moment. And if you want to give us a call at 716-753-5225, you can ask a question of my guest, a comment, announce something your club or organization is doing. A lot of times Linda Spalding's talking about the Lions Club, right, with what they're doing, or someone has an anniversary or whatever. So we'll be happy to do that. In fact, I think if you have, I'll get to that thought in a second. I'm jumping around in my brain. First, if you do throughout the week see the show and you think, oh man, I should have called in, and you didn't get a chance, just send it to us at chautauquasunrise@gmail.com. Okay, chautauquasunrise@gmail.com, and we'll get your announcement on the air as well, free of charge. All right, so now I'm going to demonstrate how you do something for somebody's birthday or anniversary. I never feel old until I realize that my baby brother just had a birthday, and let's pop up his smiley little face. I know you have, there he is. That's my baby brother Bob. He turned 70 today. Whew. Now I feel a little older. We're Irish twins, and we were talking about this last week. We're only 11 months and I think 7 days apart or something like that. And so for 20 days, we're the same age. So how crazy is that? So happy birthday, Bob. And a footnote, his daughter, Jen, her birthday's today, and she's my goddaughter. I don't even know how old she is. I'm not allowed to say that. But I could talk about my brother any day. Anyways, Bob, I know you watch the show quite often. Have a great day, and we'll catch up with you. I got a really cool present for you. All right, let's move along. So that's how simple it is. Just call in. If you have a picture, send it to us. We'd be happy to do that. Got some really interesting things that happened since we were on the show last. Let's go right to the Buffalo Bills, okay? The whole world knows what happened. Damar Hamlin had this really, 1 in a gazillion odds to get hurt and to have cardiac arrest. So why am I even bringing it up? First of all, we're glad that he's doing well. But the most important thing is, do you know CPR? I do, and I'll tell you why. Because I had a situation a number of years ago where I had to attempt to do CPR, and I was using old school CPR, and it's different now. We were taught, like in Boy Scouts and when I was working in school, you clear the airway, you tilt the head back, you do some compressions, and you try to put air through the mouth. And all. You don't do that mouth thing anymore. It's all compressions. And you put your hands over the chest, and I'm not going to demonstrate, but what I'm saying is it's the compressions that's important. Keeping the heart moving, so that keeps everything else moving throughout the body, the blood, the electrical impulses and all that. And call 911, do the compressions to the music of Staying Alive, okay? And I would encourage every one of us to go and get a CPR course. I don't even know what they charge you, but at least somebody in your family should know CPR. So what I did was I got a refresher, and now I have my card for CPR. American Red Cross does it, and a number of other, the Children's Safety Village or the Chautauqua County Safety Village, they offer it from time to time in other places. And then also knowing how to use an AED and so forth. But it's really simple, and they streamlined it down. And what made me think of it today, I was watching TV before I came here to do TV, and they were demonstrating exactly that procedure, and that's what they did for Damar Hamlin, and it saved his life. And in his case, he's doing really well. We're glad to hear that. So that's real interesting. Also, I want to say Merry Christmas to our friends in the Ukraine. I know you guys are just under horrible conditions right now, but hopefully you have this little breather, a little moment that you can celebrate something really good and exciting in your life. And you're giving me a heads up here. On my phone. Oh, it's a note. All right. Another one bites the dust you can use for CPR. Anyways, getting back to Ukraine, Natalia and all her friends that watch the show, Merry Christmas, and we just hope your new year is better than this past year, and that things get better and better and better for all of you, because I know you've got a beautiful country and beautiful people, and you're really being hurt by a situation that just doesn't seem even necessary, and it's just horrific. And we stand by you as we have from day one last February, and we've been talking with you right along. So Natalia, please spread the word to your friends that it's after all these months, we haven't gone anywhere. We're watching and thinking and praying for you guys. Okay, then finally, just under my commentary part, I never really paid attention to Washington, D.C. stuff, and I don't talk about Washington, D.C. stuff here as a rule, but crazy week, right? Trying to get a Speaker of the House and all that sort of thing. So my takeaway is this, and I don't talk politics here, as you know, but what I want to say is I have come to realize now why people are so adamant and so fervent about getting people elected in their district or within their party or within their state or whatever, because every vote makes a difference. And if they hadn't gotten a certain amount of people to do certain things over this past week, they wouldn't have a Speaker of House and our Congress would not be functioning. So, our good boy and fellow here, Chris, he works for the election board, and he's always reminding people to get out there and vote. And it starts with us, and whoever we vote for, they then have their vote, and on and on and on. So it really hit home to realize that votes do matter, and eventually it can change the course of history. And if they hadn't done what they did, we'd still be without a speaker at the moment. So just real interesting to watch that whole thing play out, and I'll leave it there. So get out and vote, and if you don't vote, you're stuck with whatever the rest of us decided. Okay. January 28th is called Doors Open Jamestown. We do this every year. A myriad of attractions in the Jamestown region are once again pleased to host Doors Open Jamestown, and that'll be Saturday 28th. The event provides a free day at local museums and attractions, launched many years ago as a way to encourage local people to visit the numerous museums and attractions available in the community in a time that is normally a slow season. Doors Open Jamestown has become a highly anticipated day for the participating organizations as well as for their guests. Our region is fortunate to be the home of so many extraordinary attractions, and many of them are in the immediate Jamestown area. 17 attractions are participating this year, featuring something for everyone, including art, nature, sports, theater, history, and a whole lot more. These amazing facilities look forward to this incredible open house day as they welcome area residents to see what they have to offer. Heads up. What does that mean, Jeff? Okay, hold on, everybody.
Hey, Doc!
Oh my God, where'd you come from?
Doc!
Hold on, everybody. Scrap where I'm at. I got to hold that.
Hey!
Where'd you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, give him a chair, give him a microphone.
What's going on?
we're on live right now. Oh my God.
How are you?
Please excuse this. This is the only person I've ever given permission to crash my show. I didn't know you were coming today.
I've been meaning to get you a script, and I've been meaning.
Oh my God. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Miscarroll, Executive Director, Lakeshore Center for the Arts. Does Sue know you're here? Your sidekick?
She's out in the car.
Oh my God. Oh, she's probably even watching this. Oh my God.
TV.
What are you doing here?
Are they talking already?
No, I'm doing an announcement, but you just crashed.
That's what I thought. You'd still be doing an announcement. But I wanted to bring you your script.
All right, my script?
Yeah.
All right, get him on camera here. What are we doing here? All right.
Get me on camera.
You look pretty good. How you feeling? Crazy.
Here.
This is not planned. I didn't know he was coming. This is real.
I wasn't sure I was either until I woke up this morning.
What do we got?
Here's your script.
My script for what?
All right, I'll tell them. Now, Doc is a rock and roll guitar player.
Yes, I am. I want to remind you of that all the time.
I tried to get him to like acting and dancing and
no dancing,
doing all kind of stuff several years ago.
Yes.
And
right here on this show.
It's just progressed to this point. And here's the news. Here I made a little
announcement.
I made a little poster so they could put it on.
Oh my God.
On here. Put it. Can you get that? Can you get that?
Are you going to embarrass me? What are we doing here?
We're
He's going to do a close up
on February.
Here, I'll hold it up while you talk. Go ahead.
On February 10th, 11th, 12th, and 14th, Lakeshore Little Theater will be Lakeshore Little Theater.
I don't know. This is your you hijacked my show. I don't know what you're talking about here.
We will be presenting the play Love Letters, which, if you're not familiar with Love Letters is a fabulous romance story that we're going to be doing for Valentine's Day. And Doc has finally progressed. He's graduated to look at this. Love Letters starring.
Oh my God.
Starring Joan Caruso and Doc Hamels.
Caruso, that's your sister. You trust me with your sister?
I'm paying her back for all she put me through as a youth. So she has to work with you now. But Doc will be performing February 10th, 11th, 12th, and
I thought you
14th.
were kidding about this.
No, 10th and 14th at 7 p.m., the 11th and 12th at 2 p.m.
All right.
So please come. It's in Westfield, New York, at our theater at Lakeshore Center for the Arts at 49 South Portage Street, which is right across the street from the Westfield Library, and we would love to see you there.
What's this story about? Love letters. Do I have to be romantic?
I wouldn't go there. I
Because it's a
wouldn't go
yes
that
or no
far.
question. It's not, am I romantic? Do I have to pretend to be romantic?
Yeah, you do.
All right.
And you two are ideally suited for these two. Do you two ladies know this play? No? Well, then you have to come. Then you have to come. So I wanted to get you your script so you could read
Yeah,
through
that'd be
it,
helpful. Yeah.
and we'll go from there. But Joni has hers, and we're getting ready to go, and all's good with the world.
Are we going to rehearse?
A little bit.
Well, let me know, okay?
We will.
Okay.
But you could read through it. And
I
see.
will.
And I'll be back in touch. I almost lost my life coming up here from Westfield. I did like a 360 in the middle of the road coming up.
Where?
On the hill.
Oh my gosh.
There's all kind of snow.
Well, if you
out
got
there.
good tires on your car, it wouldn't happen.
That's true.
So,
Anyway,
are there dirty words in here or anything?
no.
Oh, all right. So this is a clean show. This is for anybody.
Yeah.
All right.
It's love letters.
Love letters. Okay.
Did you ever write dirty love? Well, you probably
Don't
did.
ask that question.
Anyway.
This is about you, not me.
You could have that information. Did you get one of
Information.
those?
No, I can announce it from now on. Now
Good.
that I know I'm in
Put
it.
that on your thing. Yeah.
All right, February. Oh, I'm glad I'm going to be around that week.
So am I. So am I. Anyway,
What's the cost for this thing? What are they?
$20.
$20 to see me.
Same
and
as always. Same
so
as
only
all
$10 to
Lakeshore
see
Center.
me and $10 to see your sister.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
If you want to see each one of them individually, it's only $10. But you have to come on 2 different days.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Sounds like a lot of fun.
This little collegiate
Yeah.
shirt.
No, it's Gryffindor.
What is that?
Harry Potter world. That's Ravenclaw over there. We're Hogwarts guys.
Good luck, ladies.
Well, Rick, it's always nice to see you leave. I'll see you soon, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
I heard this thing of heads up, and I'm going like, what are you talking about, Jeff? And all of a sudden, you can barge in through the door.
That's right.
All right.
Heads up.
All right. Go ahead and block my shot. Go for it. There he goes, Rick
Where are
Miskill.
you two ladies from?
We're from the Child Advocacy Program of Chicago.
You're in the right place then.
Goodbye, Rick. Oh, my God. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Miskill, Executive Director, Lakeshore Center of the Arts. I made a big mistake. He's the only person I gave permission to crash my show. I didn't realize he was actually going to take me up on it. All kidding aside, I was honored to be asked to be in Love Letters. Joan, his sister, asked for me personally, which I was like shocked because I didn't even know this was coming down the line. So we're going to have some fun with that. And Joan Caruso is a great actress and very, very articulate when she's on stage. And long story short, I was in another play where she was going to be a fill-in and she got sick and then actually get to play opposite me in Becky's New Car. And so we're going to have some fun. So Rick has tortured me over the years and turned me into a quasi-actor. I kept telling him, I'm not an actor, I'm a musician. But they've somehow done that. All right, back to the show. Open doors. Audubon Community Nature Center is going to be open that day. Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame, the DAR, the Dar House, Doubletree Jamestown, that's a hotel, I guess. Infinity Visual and Performing Arts Center, Jamestown Prendergast Library, Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz Museum, Lucille Wright Air Museum, Lucille Ball Little Theater. There's a lot of Lucy's. Mart's Cole Observatory, Marvin Community House, National Comedy Center, Northwest Arena, Pearl City Clay House. We're going to have them on the show here soon. Reginald A. Center for the Arts, as we always talk about, the Robert H. Jackson Center and Roger Torrey Peterson Institute. They're all going to be open January 28th, free of charge. Now, a thing I got to remind you is sometimes you might want to check in with them because sometimes you have to make reservations because they can only accept so many people. All right, we're going to talk about this again next week, so I'll skip ahead so that we have more time for my guests who are anxiously to get on here that took their time. Mabel Chautauqua Community Chamber and Commerce Committee is hardworking, planning for the 2023, I got to get used to that number, 2023 Mayville's Winter Festival. This popular annual event will be held President's Day weekend, February 17th through the 19th, right down the road at Lakeside Park in Mayville. The event brings tens of thousands of patrons to the Mayville region and so forth. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Everybody used to know it was the Ice Castle, but now it's just Winter Festival, because maybe we'll have an Ice Castle, maybe we won't. This is an important one. Foster Parent Open House, January 12th. The Chautauqua County Department of Health and Human Services Home Finding Team will host a foster parent open house on Thursday, January 12th. For convenience, the department will offer an in-person session and a virtual session. The in-person session will take place from 5 to 6 at the Kayleagh campus of Park United Methodist Church at 25 Maple Avenue in Kayleagh. Attendees should enter through the side door. The virtual session will take place from 7 to 8. If you enjoy working with children and want to help families in our community, consider attending one of these events. Attendees will learn about various foster care and adoption programs and meet our home finding team. Events are free and open to the public. So here's the phone number, 661-8043, 661-8043. Okay, and then finally, just real quickly, there's a number of movies that are showing at the Reg Lene coming up. She Said will be shown on January 11th. Times reporter Megan Tohey break one of the most important stories in a generation, a story that shattered decades of silence around the subject of sexual assault. Boy, talk about good timing. And in Hollywood, impelled a shift in American culture that continues this day. She Said is rated R, 129 minutes long. January 14th, The Menu. These folks travel to a coastal island to eat an exclusive restaurant where the chef has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises. I don't want to know about that one. Tickets to movies are $7 and so forth. Go to the box office throughout the week or give them a call at 484-7070. I'm going to cut things short because I want to get to my guest because I did have my interruption earlier. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Is the seat supposed to be forward-facing or rear-facing? Did they move to a booster seat too soon? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Don't think you know. Know you know.
A while back, I had some folks on here talking about domestic violence, talking about sexual abuse in the home, in the community, and so forth. And then it was recommended that we talk about some other things, human trafficking, the slave trade, and so forth. And I invited two wonderful ladies to come on a year ago. I can't believe it's in a year ago. So we got Kayleagh Feser and Karen Yeversky that returned from CAP, correct?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
You did.
And what's CAP stand for?
So CAP stands for the Child Advocacy Program of Chautauqua County.
Okay. And we're going to talk about a heavy topic today. And we said we were going to do this from last year in that I call it the dark underbelly of our world. I talk about how is this possible this is happening in Chautauqua County? I mean, we're just kind of like this quiet little rural area. It's happening in our communities, right? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about human trafficking and awareness and so forth. I'm going to let you take the control of the show and go anywhere you want, and I'll jump in wherever. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Doc, for having us today. As you said, my name's Kayleagh Feser, and I oversee the Safe Harbor program at the Child Advocacy Program. And here with me is our advocate.
I'm Karen Yeversky, and I am a family advocate both at the Child Advocacy Program, but also as part of the Safe Harbor program, especially working with the human trafficking elements that we do, anti-human trafficking, I should say.
Okay.
So just to give you a quick overview of CAP and the services we provide, many of you may be familiar with the Child Advocacy Program. We serve all of Chautauqua County, and we coordinate a community response to bring hope, healing, and justice to families and children who have been exposed to or suffered child abuse, violence, or other types of trauma. Specifically, our agency works with youth who have experienced some sort of sexual abuse, and with that is our Safe Harbor program. Underneath that umbrella of the Child Advocacy Program, we have Safe Harbor. And Safe Harbor is New York State's response to the growing number of identified cases of commercial sexual exploitation of children and human trafficking. Chautauqua County started to receive funding for this program from the State of New York Office of Children and Family Services a few years ago, back in 2016. And Chautauqua County has funneled that money in the past few years to the Child Advocacy Program, where Karen and I and the rest of our colleagues are doing this work to bring awareness to the community about the realities of trafficking in rural communities, and to educate professionals and those who work with youth to be able to identify the signs of trafficking and exploitation, how to respond and report appropriately and in a trauma-informed, risk-tolerant, youth-centered way, and then ultimately how to intervene in a way that's appropriate as well. So we're going to talk to you a little bit today about commercial sexual exploitation of children and trafficking, and the work that we're doing here with our community partners to shed light on this issue and try to make a difference here in our community.
How big is the problem?
So
It's big.
It's big.
Well, and it's hard to know because those numbers are hard to count.
Right.
But if we skip ahead a little bit to in our county, well, in the worldwide estimates that there are about 25 million victims of human trafficking of various sorts globally.
How many?
About 25 million, and that would include
25
labor
million people?
worldwide. Yeah, that's an estimate from the Department of Homeland Security. And again, that would include labor trafficking as well. In Chautauqua County, since we've been counting, and we have a number of agencies that screen kids for risk levels of sexual exploitation or trafficking, and we'll talk in a few minutes about the difference between those. Since 2016, we've had 232 youth referred to our program as at risk for trafficking. It doesn't mean they are being trafficked or sexually exploited, but means there are factors in their lives and situations that have happened that put them at risk, or that there is concern that there might be risk of exploitation. 43 actually meet that federal definition. So collectively, the agencies that report to us and through our screens, there are 43 of those youth who are reported to be at risk,
And
or who meet the federal definition.
When we say youth, what age are we talking here?
18, under 18.
Under 18. Because then 18 would be adult, right?
Yep.
Right.
I ask this question all the time because different agencies had different thresholds.
Yeah, so that being said, when we're talking about human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation from our perspective, we are talking about minors, people under the age of 18.
Okay.
However, our program does work with and respond to youth who are a little bit older than that. Our funding allows us to work with folks up to the age of 21, and then we do have some, unrestricted funding or whatnot to serve older young adults that have maybe experienced this in their younger years. And then we try to connect them with other agencies that are more attuned with the adult population.
Holy mackerel. Okay. So let's define terms.
Okay.
Human trafficking and everything else, exploitation.
Over to you.
So I will give you the very legal terms, and then Karen will break that down for you. So according to our federal legislation, sex trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act, in which the commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. And then our federal legislation also provides us with a definition for labor trafficking, and that is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery.
Is that going on in our country?
Kind of a mouthful.
People in bondage?
Not so much, and that's when we talk about trafficking. I think we asked you this last year. What do you picture when you hear human trafficking? I mean, what do you think the general public kind of pictures?
What I
when
think of is sadly maybe a young girl in her teens that maybe has run away and somebody's taken them under their wing and abused them. Like a sugar daddy type thing.
Yep.
So, am I close?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you maybe have heard a little bit about this before.
Well, you know, being an educator, I worked with a very volatile population in special education and so forth. And being an administrator, superintendent, you know, we dealt with this. We have a phone call already, so
Awesome.
let's take a phone call. Morning, caller.
Morning, Doc. It's Mike Felsman from Portland.
Hey, Mike, 2 weeks in a row. How
yeah,
are you?
2 weeks in a row. I gotta turn away from my television set. That delay thing's kind of messing with me a little. But I actually this morning had a question for one of your guests.
Is that how it works?
Kayleagh.
Yes.
I just saw your last name on the screen is Feser.
Yep.
Are you related by any chance to Al or Melanie Feser?
Yes, and they're watching this right now, so they're laughing at home. Whoever, I didn't catch your name when you called in, but yes, Al and Melanie are my parents.
I thought maybe. Well, I can do a shout out to Al and Melanie, and my name is Mike Felsman. They will recognize the name more than you do for a couple reasons. One, I graduated high school with your dad. And two, one time I ran into your dad, and he does something a little bit similar to what I do. I believe he's still a sports official.
Yes.
Or at least he was.
Yep.
Well, I am as well. We do different sports. I happen to do swimming.
Okay.
But I was listening a little bit to your presentation. I'll get off the phone soon. But yeah, I'm glad you're doing that because, and I know your folks would agree with me. Kids should have kind of a safe, nurturing type environment. I mean, that's one of the things I've enjoyed with doing swimming over the years is that they can come in and have a good time, feel safe. Swimming's not as overly competitive like say football and basketball, so it's kind of a pleasant environment. So yeah, I think if we can do stuff to keep our kids safe and more protected environment, at least away from that kind of danger, I think it's a good thing. But I did see your name, Kayleagh, and I thought you were their daughter.
Yeah.
And I have met you, but you were probably, I don't know, maybe 7 years old or something.
Oh my gosh, Mike.
So I wouldn't think you'd remember me.
Well, your name sounds familiar, so I think I may have heard of you before.
All right, Mike.
Okay, alrighty. Yeah, well, I've lived in Brockton, Portland most of my life.
Okay. Well, Mike, thanks for calling in. Happy New Year.
All right, you too, Doc. We'll
Okay,
see you.
take care.
Bye now.
I have to apologize. Looking at F-E-S-E-R, I didn't realize you say
It's
phaser.
quite all right. It happens often. But Mike had such great comments, and that is, kind of the underpinning of the message Karen and I like to spread about working with youth who are in vulnerable situations like trafficking or some other kind of abuse. It really only takes one healthy adult and that gateway to that different lifestyle, whether that's swimming or Girl Scouts or ballet or whatnot, right? It's exposing youth to different opportunities in a healthy way and having that those protective factors.
And those adults
And those
being healthy
adults that can
themselves.
model
Because we've certainly
healthy
seen
relationships
that in the sports
and-
world where it has not been, in the
Absolutely.
Olympics and that. So the person that I described, was that typical?
Certainly.
Okay.
That's probably more common. Sometimes when people think of human trafficking, we see the pictures of people chained up or in cages or packed into vans. And it's funny when we've done a little bit of
Hollywood.
information
Yeah.
in schools, and I always ask kids what they think, and almost always they say, oh, it's people in white vans, picking up kids, these white panel vans. I don't know how the white panel van got the bad rap, but that's what people picture. And those things happen. And worldwide, certainly you see, a young woman packed into brothels and things like that and forced to do stuff. But in Chautauqua County, what we see more is what you described.
More subtle.
More subtle, more hidden. There certainly are some situations where kids have been moved, taken to Buffalo or to Erie or places like that for motel parties and forced to do sexual things there. So there's some element of moving around, but I think just the word human trafficking tends to make people think it involves transporting people around or across borders or whatever, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. The majority of what we see is happening in our neighborhoods and in our communities, and not just in Jamestown and Dunkirk. People always think, well, we live out in rural Chautauqua County, it doesn't happen here. but
In
it
fact,
does.
in rural, it would be easier.
In some ways, yeah.
Less eyes.
Yeah,
Right? Boys are vulnerable.
Absolutely. So I don't know if we wrote this down. About 87% of the youth that we've identified to be at risk of those the 232 kids are girls. But that doesn't mean that this only happens to girls. As with other interpersonal crimes and violence, girls are more likely to self-identify that they've been victimized and more likely to report their victimization, whereas boys are not. And I think, that could lead into a huge discussion of the reasons why, and I don't know that we have all that time right now, but I think there's so much stigma around boys, whether it's mental health or victimization, really all goes together, and they're very unlikely to come forward.
Wow. I think we always think of the world around us as nice and safe and healthy, but there's really sickness out there that people prey on these young people.
Yeah.
Wow. And so let me see if I got this straight. So what we're saying is human trafficking is where somebody, now are these like usually young adults or older people that influence these young people?
Yes.
All the above.
All the above. There's really no profiling power.
Is it cyclical? I mean, has this been like generational where the people do these things?
Surely, and not too, right?
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out what's the origins of why this is happening.
Well, it's probably happened for millennia.
Yeah, thousands of years,
Yeah.
hundreds of years. Yeah.
And it's aggravated by situations like poverty, like substance abuse. All of those things put people at greater risk because they're desperate or the people around them are desperate. So those are aggravating circumstances, but they're certainly not the only ones. And just like there's no set profile for traffickers or exploiters, there's also no set profile for victims.
Oh boy.
Although again, there are vulnerabilities. One of the vulnerabilities is simply being an adolescent. One of the, we have a slide that talks about vulnerabilities
Okay.
and risk factors, and this is the one I enjoy reading this because when we're giving trainings to youth serving agencies, people who work in youth serving agencies, I'll say something like some things that make people vulnerable to.
Okay, so let's pop that screen up.
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
the vulnerabilities, if I can say it, and risk factors. So, feelings of being misunderstood. They want to develop romantic relationships.
Are we talking about teenagers?
Exactly.
Oh my God! Oh.
I mean, if you look at that list of vulnerabilities, it pretty much defines almost any teenager we
Yeah.
can think of. Now so it means they're vulnerable. It doesn't mean they have, that they're going to be
This is
trafficked.
pretty normal stuff.
It's very normal stuff. And then when you add to it those risk factors of already a history of sexual or physical abuse, that interaction with the foster care and juvenile justice systems, unhoused youth we already talked about, undocumented or unaccompanied children. We hear about the immigration and refugee issues all the time. Those folks are certainly at much higher risk. You mentioned working with children in special ed, so those with developmental or
disability.
intellectual disabilities and the LGBTQIA population as well.
So let's keep that up, Jeff, for a minute. So with these risk factors, somebody that's preying on kids would be looking for kids in these categories.
Absolutely.
So these would be like easy hits.
Right. So the foster care system and juvenile justice systems are huge in that sense. In New York State, it's estimated that 83% of confirmed victims of commercial sexual exploitation have a past history of being involved in the foster care system or juvenile justice system. 83%, which is pretty significant. So as Karen had mentioned, we work with a multitude of agencies in the community that are screening the youth that come into their programs for risk factors and red flags of trafficking. And as I had mentioned, a lot of the funding for this program comes through the state of New York into Chautauqua County. So those folks that are part of the Chautauqua County system and part of the Office for Children and Family Services are mandated to use these screening tools. So that's been really helpful for us in thinking of like child welfare, probation, those types of agencies, because of that statistic, knowing that kids who have had those past interactions with those systems are going to be at risk. So if we can catch them, as they're coming into those systems, to really wrap around as many services and the right supports as we can.
We've had a couple shows here where we talked about the LGBTQIA plus community. Why would they be at risk?
Well, often they aren't as well accepted as other kids.
Okay.
There are
So they're feeling isolated, perhaps.
feeling isolated. Sometimes families kick them out if kids come out or
Right,
are
okay,
outed
I
by
get you
somebody.
now.
So then they become those kids on the street who are,
Okay.
you know, a second risk factor there.
So what I'm hearing is any factor that kind of gets a young person isolated from family, the group,
Social
support
support,
group.
yep.
Yep.
Wow.
And when we recognize that, then we can begin to say, okay, so then what are the solutions or what are the things that we can do to help prevent that
Well,
from happening?
Can I ask a question before that? So what are we looking for? If I'm the guy on this that's in the neighborhood and kids are running around all the time, you know, being an educator, what are some signs? What are we looking for?
Absolutely. One of the major red flags is youth having material goods that they may not have the means to afford. So could be, excuse me, like a brand new cell phone, multiple cell phones. That can always be a tip. If they have like clothing that they don't have the means to afford,
Especially sneakers.
shoes,
and-
exactly, like
yeah.
those brand new Air Force Ones, or their nails done, hair done, those kinds of things.
Makeup.
Yeah. If it's beyond what you're typically
Right,
seeing,
and
right?
just one of these is not going to set it off, but
Yeah.
Exactly.
a pattern of this probably, right?
Yep.
Okay. Wow.
Especially if you know them and you talk to them and their explanation of how they got that stuff seems kind of suspect. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
How about any physical things to look for, like
Tattoos?
Tattoos.
Oh, tattoos.
Often,
What's
you
with the
know, in the
tattoos?
trafficking world, we hear of tattoos expressing ownership.
or
you
your
know,
mark, like a
yeah,
stamp?
like branded or a tattoo or a brand, you know, with their trafficker or exploiter's name or a symbol, like.
Any universal symbols
personifying-
out there?
Yeah.
Are there any?
No, I don't know necessarily. We hear dollar signs, like barcodes, really implying
Really?
ownership.
Holy cow.
So that in those tattoos, they, you know, research tells us they tend to be in more visible places. So like necks, hands, faces,
Really?
those types of things.
And we've seen that in Chautauqua County? Really?
Not, that's probably not one of the first things
Not one
we
of the first
see.
things we
Yeah, but
would
it's
see,
possible.
but I think that there's little bits of pieces that you see all together, and those red flags are what kind of help us make a more complete picture.
And the thing that I think with trafficking is I call it the throughway. We are connected by the throughway, right?
Yeah.
And kids come and go, drugs come and go, all the bad stuff in the world travels the network real easy. And so if kids are moving into your neighborhood or you see somebody that you're not familiar with, you start seeing some of these things, you might
Absolutely.
look for those. I didn't know anything about those tattoos, so I just learned something
And
today.
another thing to keep in mind with that is, yes, certainly kids can be moved around for these things, but oftentimes kids and adults are trafficked right in their own homes and in their own neighborhoods. So another way to think about it is, are there random men coming in and out of that home? Are there cars pulling up, or is that child or a young adult getting into a car with random people multiple times a day? Like, those are things to look for. It doesn't always have to be like that transport or transportation. It can happen wherever somebody is.
And this is all cash? This is all
Not necessarily,
barter,
I
barter
mean-
of some sort?
Yeah, exactly. It has to be an exchange of value. So it could be money, it could be drugs, it could be clothing, it could be a vacation, really, right? Anything little. It could be food. We've worked with youth who have had to trade sex for food. Really, you know, and that's getting into more of what we would call survival sex,
Yeah.
but that's under the umbrella of human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation.
Yeah, we do have another slide that says breaking it down. Maybe we can bring that one up as well. And sort of all of this falls under the larger umbrella of child sexual abuse, which is what the Child Advocacy Program was
Right.
originally started to address. Under that, we have this CSEC, that it stands for, I guess we don't even have it spelled out here, but CSEC is the Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children. And that can be any exchange of something of value for something sexual. And it could just be going on between that youth and one other person. And then under CSEC, we have things, I'm going to start from the right, stripping and dancing, which, you know, people know what that is. We don't see that with our youth as much, but
Now,
that
let me
could
jump in
happen.
here. Is that possibly for like YouTube and things like that?
Well,
TikTok or whatever?
we'll
Yes,
get
and-
to that electronic one in a minute.
But I mean, that
But
sort
yeah,
of,
Sure.
yeah, sure.
that kind of makes me think about
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, a good tie-in. Sex for desired goods is one of the things that we've been seeing. We just added this since we were here last year. That's not necessarily survival sex, but those youth who maybe don't have access to the things that other kids have.
So
the
poverty
sneakers.
perhaps, we can,
Yep.
in these preconditions.
Yep. Survival sex is what
You
we've
just
already
talked
talked
about
about.
for
Yep.
food and stuff, shelter.
Place to stay. Yep. Food. Child sexual abuse materials. That would be where the TikTok stuff comes
okay.
under.
I
So
gotcha. Yep, yep.
it used to be called child porn. Pornography is acceptable to some people, and so when we say child porn, it may just not seem like a big deal. But when people are seeing child porn, they are seeing sexual abuse. They are seeing child sexual abuse happening. So child sexual abuse materials, and certainly with the internet right now, that's a huge issue, including self-generated child sexual abuse. So kids putting themselves out there
Yeah.
sometimes, or what often happens is kids may be putting a little something out there, and then somebody starts saying, okay, send me more, send
Here
me
we
more,
go.
and pretty soon,
And now they feel good and important because,
yes, and
special.
or now they're being what they call sextortion, required to send more and more and more. So, well, if you don't send me more, then
I'm going to tell your parents.
Exactly,
I'm
or
gonna
I'm
put
going
this
to
on
print
the-
this all over
Yeah.
the
Tell everybody,
school.
all your friends. Holy
Exactly.
man.
So- and that we're seeing
right
a
now,
lot
this
of.
is screaming in my head. Parents,
Right.
know what your kids are doing.
Yes.
So one statistic I like to share with that is in 2020, it was estimated that 100,000 new images of child sexual abuse material was uploaded to the internet every day in the
What?
United States.
100,000 a day?
100,000 images in the U.S. only every day of child sexual abuse materials. And that was 3 years ago, and I'm willing to bet that that number has increased.
That's like, I can't even do the math.
Right, it's mind-boggling.
Millions.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So there's an appetite for this, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like drugs. There's an appetite for drugs. Well, I was in a good mood before I came on the show today. Holy mackerel.
Well, let's move to our 2022 development. So what happened last year, maybe new in our Safe Harbor program, because we did. I don't know how we're doing on time, but we do
We
want
got about 12 minutes.
Okay. We want to get to what do we do about it,
Yeah.
because I don't ever want to leave people with a feeling of hopelessness or this is a huge problem and it's so overwhelming that we can't even think about it, because I think that can be the
Okay,
reaction.
maybe
So-
you feel better.
well, I'm not sure. I'll
Little bit.
totally. First, I want to say more about the labor trafficking thing. One of the things that we've seen in 2022 is more attention brought to us about cases of labor trafficking.
So people are identifying it.
Yes.
That's
and
important.
It is
Absolutely.
important.
Okay.
And we've had better training. Again, part of all of this is getting training out there, learning more about it, and then people start to see it. So you don't see it if you don't know what to be looking for.
And that's my job, is to help you with that.
Absolutely, and we
So labor
appreciate that.
trafficking is where people are held against their will to do work.
Yes. Yep, and they can be held in a number of ways. Certainly, probably what we see the most are when we have immigrants who are here. Maybe they're here legally, maybe they aren't, but one of the most effective ways of holding them against their will is taking their documentation. So whatever ID they have, whatever immigration paperwork, the trafficker holds on to that as a way of keeping them under control. Or in some rare cases, maybe even having contacts in their country of origin and making threats against family and
Oh
things
boy,
that's there.
it's complicated.
It is. And we also see, so I'm not to the good news part yet, sorry.
Okay, keep going.
We also see sometimes that labor trafficking and sex trafficking, or at least sexual abuse, can intersect, because where there's labor trafficking, there might then also be family members who are being sexually exploited as well, and that can be heartbreaking. And can be heartbreaking for the parents who really are in no position. They're powerless. So again, labor trafficking targets those who don't have power and privilege.
Okay.
And so we've been seeing more of that. We have developed some relationships with the International Institute in Buffalo. So the other part of that slide is the expanding collaboration with several different agencies. The International Institute of Buffalo that works with immigrants, refugees, and so they are seeing both labor and sex trafficking more on an international level, but they also have the resources to provide trainings for us.
Okay.
We have a woman who works with the Western New York Coalition of Farm Worker Agencies, and she is an immigration attorney who really knows this stuff inside out, and is really, she had been working with the International Institute more closely, still does, but also now with his farm worker agencies, and so her focus really is on labor trafficking, and she and the International Institute have provided trainings at the beginning of this school year to all of the faculty at Jamestown High School. And both Dunkirk and Jamestown High Schools teachers, especially those who are working with the ENL, English for New Language, English as a New Language, where they're working with immigrants, they have learned the red flags and sometimes are seeing concerning things or hearing things from their students.
Are they working in the fruit belt, like the grape area, like where we are focused right now? Because we have the
Sure.
migrants that come in and work.
We, you know, typically in this part of, you know, this area geographically, we tend to see more labor trafficking in those, in like the grapes and blueberries where there's the hand tying. It's those types of.
Okay. So you're aware of that situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so those agencies have provided training and resources to us and to the schools, and as the schools are seeing things, they're reporting it to us, or most often to the other people that we work with in the Western New York Human Trafficking Task Force. I got to get all
like
these.
that. Western
Yes.
New York Human Trafficking.
Are people reluctant to report? I mean, fear for their
Absolutely.
life?
Oh,
I would
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sitting here going like, if I saw something like this, I'm thinking of a cartel or something, and I'd be kind of concerned.
Well, it is. That's
So can
exactly
people
what
report
it is.
things anonymously?
Yes, but it's hard to get people the help that they need if it's anonymous. And really that key is helping them to that true pathway of legal immigration and getting them into a safe place. And if people are not willing to identify themselves and truly share the situation they're in, it's very hard to get them.
Well, let me put it this way: can you report it, but no one knows that you reported it?
Yeah, so we will.
That's what I guess what I mean.
Yeah,
Is are you a protected reporter?
Absolutely. I mean, well, as you know, if you are a mandated reporter,
Right.
you can report anonymously. It's advised that you do share your information because that makes it easier for all investigations.
Nurses, doctors, teachers,
Social
administrators,
workers,
social
exactly,
workers,
yep.
ministers, all that stuff.
Yep, all that stuff. But if you're not a mandated reporter, just a general person,
Everyday
public,
person?
there is a confidential tip line. I think it's one of the last screens last slides that we have with our names on it.
Okay.
There's a human trafficking confidential tip line, and that goes to the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office, and that phone number is 833-872-0020.
Wait a minute. 833-872.
0020.
Okay.
And you can call that number to anonymously report suspicions or concerns of human trafficking. And then, if, again, though, in most circumstances, it's more helpful if you can identify yourself. But if that's a safety concern, you certainly can remain anonymous.
And it's important. We are working with the task force and the sheriff's office because some of these are pretty sensitive cases. So it's important not to try to dive in and find out too much and try to run and get help. You do need to be sensitive about how to, what to do in those situations.
All right, so let me mock up a scenario here. A young girl, in our neighbor, I'm making this up now, total makeup. You see something and you think, wow, this young lady doesn't seem to be typical. And she's showing some of these signs, and I call this number. So what do you do about it? What do you all do? What happens?
Depends a lot on the situation.
Well, just go ahead, run with it.
Yeah, okay, so you call the sheriff's office, they maybe get whatever information they can of you. What have you seen? If it seems like there is a caregiver involved with the concern, they may make a CPS report and Child Protective Services. And CAP works with what's called the Child Abuse Multidisciplinary Team, so CPS and law enforcement work kind
So
of
they make a
parallel.
referral to you.
And they would often involve us as well. And it really usually would involve then somebody, checking with that youth, whether it's at school or a CPS worker going to the home and say, somebody has a concern about your daughter, do you know why they would be concerned? So they don't give a whole lot of information, but just trying to check out things
Kind of an overview kind of a thing, all right?
and maybe checking into, what have people seen at the school or whatever. It may involve talking with the youth, and certainly you as a neighbor. One of the things that, as we talk about what can people do, is to build relationships with kids. And if you see something going on, we don't always know what those red flags indicate. But if we see that a youth maybe is struggling or in a situation that just doesn't feel right, reach out and just try to connect with them. Obviously you have to be a little careful. You don't want to make them think that you're going to harm them. But, take an interest in them, maybe try to offer some support or at least some, friendship. Maybe do it with your wife. You've mentioned your wife, so as a couple, so it's not quite so,
That's a good idea.
creepy. Not that you're creepy.
No.
Don't want to
Thank you for
indicate
that.
that.
Thank you. But
those are
that was
concerns.
something I might not have thought of, is do as a couple, so that the individual feels comfortable.
Yes, and do it, in public. Don't invite her into your home.
Maybe in a restaurant or someplace.
Sure.
Yeah, hang out.
But kids need to know that adults are paying attention and care, and they may not disclose what's going on when they first meet you.
Sure.
But if they know that there's somebody who is paying attention, who seems concerned, it may make it easier for them to talk about it, to reach out for help as help is needed.
I guess where I'm going with this is that when people are listening right now, that they realize that if you make a referral, nobody's going to come busting into that house like gangbusters and take care of the problem, because that's not. It's way too complicated.
Way too complicated.
Exactly.
Some of these cases, and particularly, well, they're all different, but some of these labor trafficking cases, we work with this Western New York District of Human Trafficking Task Force, and we hear about other counties in our area that have had these similar cases that have taken 6, 7, 8 years to prosecute. So this can be a really long time. And then when we talk, specifically about sex trafficking or commercial sexual exploitation, these are such clandestine crimes. They're done in secret, they're done in privacy, there's very little evidence, very often, they're very hard cases to prosecute. And so we have all these systems in place to respond, and in a perfect world, they can do that, but it's not a perfect world. So that's where we have to be creative, and maybe that they're not going to see a day in court for their case necessarily, but how can we build resiliency and help build up those protective factors and help them get to a better place and heal through that, right?
So where are the services for the victims? I'm going to call them victims.
Okay.
What do we do? What happens? We have a couple minutes left here.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I want to mention, and again in this expanded collaboration, there's a group in Chautauqua County, primarily right now in the Jamestown area, called Arise Chautauqua. And this came out of an effort a few years ago that was called Brave, Brave for Girls, aimed at girls at risk, adolescent girls at risk of sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and a way to try to help those girls understand their value and their worth and give them connections that are healthy. There were some events that were held in the Jamestown area a few years ago. COVID hit, so those events changed a little bit. And now Jessica McKeever, Kayleagh Lindstrom are two women, and along with Kayleagh Feser, who have actually started a nonprofit called Arise Chautauqua. And one of the things they are doing is they have been given a house in Jamestown. They're making a drop-in center for adolescent girls to be staffed with volunteers. It's right now being rehabbed as we speak. This morning there's a volunteer group there actually rehabbing the house to provide a place for any adolescent girls, but especially those who are maybe not as well supported, to come to hang out after school to learn some life skills like cooking or finances or whatever, and just to have some support, some healthy adults working with them there. So that's, and also to develop support group girls circles at various areas around the county, and that's what Kayleagh has been doing at Bemis Point United Methodist Church. So.
All right, we're just about out of time. Kayleagh Feser, I'll say it correctly this time. Karen Yeversky, thanks for joining me today. Kayleagh, how about a phone number one more time for people to get a hold of us?
Sure. You can reach us at the Child Advocacy Program at 716-338-9844. And you can report anonymous concerns of human trafficking to the Chautauqua County Sheriff's Office at their confidential tip line, 833-872-0020.
Okay, folks, we've talked about some heavy stuff today. This is our community. We own it. Let's take care of it, and especially our youth that maybe are in trouble or being abused. We can make a difference. Ladies, thanks. We got to keep this going. Come back next year.
We will.
Okay?
All
All right, folks, we're going to do this all again next week with more topics. Who knows what we're going to talk about or who's going to come barging in. So have a great weekend and think about what we talked about today. I am, because I got some concerns still. All right, you take care and be safe out there. It's a little slippery out here. Bye-bye now.